Do any follow-up items from tonight and also from our previous meeting. And then on June 17th, council or staff will bring back the budget for a public hearing and budget adoption. The agenda tonight, we're going to touch on three main areas: the capital improvement program, CIP overview. We're going to take a look at two of our two internal service funds, and then also we're going to go over some of the proposed fund balance spending that's included in this capital improvement budget. So with that, we'll take a look at where our primary funding sources are, what our primary funding sources are for our CIP. You'll notice the general funds at the bottom. Staff will typically always try to find other funds or grants to fund our CIP, but occasionally we do use the general fund for some capital improvement programs. Measure M is our share of the half-cent sales tax that's county-wide, and it's allocated to us by the county. Gas tax is statewide. That's the surcharge on fuel, and we get a portion of that to help with transportation and streets and roads maintenance. Development fees, the city receives whenever there's a development in town, and we're going to be getting some as part of the hospital buildings and the parking structure, and then also staff will pursue grants when they're available. So that's where our funding comes from. And our overview of our capital improvement program this year, we're looking at new projects, 1.4 million, just over 1.4 million, and also 1.7 million in carryovers. The carryover from 12-13 is a large part of that is the Coyote Creek Park project. And the third bullet point I want to point out here, we're drawing down our fund balances in the aggregate between our special revenue funds and capital project funds by $630,000 to complete projects, and it sort of illustrates our cyclical nature of capital projects and the funding. Sometimes the funding builds up, and then we have aggressively been going after streets and roads and different CIP projects the last several years, and that's why we're now drawing those balances down. So in the future years, next couple of years, we'll probably see a tapering off. We'll still be doing capital projects, but those funds will build up again, and then the cycle will start over. So with that, that's our overview of the capital projects funds, and we're going to talk about next our internal service funds. We have two. They're funded on a cost reimbursement basis from the fund that they're providing the service to. The two funds we have are the garage fund and the technology replacement fund, and we're going to go into each one of those on the next two slides. Our internal service fund for the garage, this basically maintains our fleet of vehicles and equipment. We're looking at ending the fiscal year 13-14 with just $75,000 left in fund balance. We've been drawing down on this account for several years. The net reduction will be $16,500 this year, and primarily going to 3 police vehicles and needed police vehicle equipment for a total charge of $124,000. Our other internal service fund is our technology fund, projected to end fiscal year 13-14 with $31,000 in fund balance. That reduces the fund balance by $162,000. Nearly $150,000 of that is for our proposed new phone system. So those are our two internal service funds. And then finally, the third item we're going to talk about in detail tonight is our proposed fund balance spending. The first bullet point, those two items are proposed to come from unassigned fund balance, and the bottom two are spending from reserves that we've set aside in our general fund. You'll see pool repairs appears twice. That's because we do have money left over from our CIP fund for the pool on the bottom one, but the top one, would be spending from unassigned fund balance. And we'll go into each one of these on the next couple slides. So our emergency generator, that's a $100,000 project, and we're proposing to spend that from general fund unassigned fund balance. It'll be transferred to our building improvement fund, and the project will be managed from the building improvement fund. Now this emergency generator, it supports the city hall and PD buildings, and right now my understanding is we don't have one that's up to the task of keeping the building going if something goes wrong. The pool repairs, these are needed pool repairs, $40,000 worth, and again that would be unassigned. We have a question? Sure.
You may. Back when I was on council before, we had this issue with the generator, and at that time it was about $85,000. This is a permanently installed generator, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What happened to the plan that was put in place back then where we spent about $1,500 for a pigtail and the ability to draw on a generator from JFTB?
That was basically a, would you say, a pie in the sky idea at the time. We were investigating to see if that was a possibility. At this point, it is not a possibility.
I'm a little confused then, because my understanding was that the council took that direction, and it wasn't a pie in the sky, that the 1,500 or so was designed to make a pigtail to connect to that, and that they had adequate generators over there to assist and supply us with. Has that changed?
As far as I know, yes. Yeah, I had a meeting over there, and from what that meeting came, the result of that meeting was, if we have a disaster, of big proportion, the base is going to go basically onto lockdown, and we're not going to have the ability to go over there and get a generator. The pigtail that I think you may be referring to was a pigtail harness for $1,500 to apply our generator to a local gas station in the city to pump fuel also out of. I remember that pigtail being talked about, because we don't have our in-tank, in-ground gas pump any longer. But as far as a generator to use from the base, the problem is we're not able to get on the base because they will put the base down at a lockdown. And I think Cassandra, we talked about that earlier as well.
Who at the base are you dealing with?
Back at that time, we were talking about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. He's no longer at the base, but I would more than we can go over there and talk to him again and see if that's even a possibility.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no problem going over.
My
and talking to him.
objection remains the same, is that until we get a plan in place of what we're going to do with this property, spending large capital dollars that get stuck here and can't be used, it is a real issue. And it isn't a matter of saying I'm totally opposed to doing anything. I want to see a plan in place that says, here's what we're doing to get out of here,
Right.
to get off of this property.
The generator that we're looking at, one of the generators we're looking at is transferable. You can take it to wherever. It's not on wheels. It is permanently fixed. But we're talking, maybe $1,500 to $3,000 to basically pick it up and move it to another site. Because if we go to another site, obviously we'll still need a backup generator, and this generator would, be able to handle that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Same thing relative to the phone system in tech, that most of those are transferable. If you move out of a building, you can move it. There is expense involved in it, but it's not something that's permanently locked down to the venue. So I wouldn't have an objection on that. And if we're looking at some method to be able to move it if we had to.
Right.
Needless to say, that was about 5 or 6 years ago, and I still don't see a plan coming through at this point. But I think from the standpoint of community development, they're aware that we need to be looking at something else from the standpoint of use of this property. So. Okay, thank you.
So the other item here, oh, yeah, sure.
One slide, just want to clarify a point.
Which way are we going?
But go back one slide.
Sure.
And just clarify that unassigned fund balance is what we commonly call the reserve, correct?
It's a portion of the reserve that hasn't been set aside for any specific purpose.
Okay, so we're basically spending more money than we're taking in.
Yeah, this would be spending
Okay,
our savings.
Thank you, made my
Yes.
point.
Mayor and council, I would just like to point out that when you're talking about an emergency generator and how crucial it is, it's the reserve is oftentimes set aside for emergencies, and this is an emergency. And I'm just wondering if it would please the council if we could maybe check with the base again and revisit that item before we adopt the final budget. Might be worth investigating.
My only point was that the number of funds leads to a confusion as to how money's being spent. And right now, we're showing a slight fund, negative, a slight positive about $9,000. But in reality now, we're spending, we're negative $91,000. I think it's our job to balance the budget and look at all the factors that do that, and so we have to make other decisions. I'm not against the generator, I'm just saying,
Right.
we have to pool everything so we make decisions that show that we're not falling further behind. That's really what I was after.
It's a good
Thank
point.
you.
Very good point.
So moving on, we have two projects that we have set aside money for in our fund balance designations or reserves. One is our Los Alamitos Boulevard revitalization project. There's actually $200,000 set aside for that project, 100 which is proposed to be spent this year and 100,000 next year. And the second item there, pool repairs. We do have 40,000 that was from the pool CIP account that is available for spending, and staff is recommending we spend that to repair the pool out at the Joint Forces Base.
I just, Mayor and Council, I know our Parks and Rec Director, you're looking into some alternate funds that might be used for this, correct?
Right, we're trying to touch base with the Aquatics Foundation to determine if they are willing to come in with the money that's sitting in their account.
Thought that was done already as well.
No, we had talked about it, and it was discussed, and at one point, they had expressed a desire to do so, and since then had either again, I haven't touched base, but I know Angie had spoken with a couple of them, and they no longer had that desire, is my understanding. So I'm still trying to get in touch with a couple of them and see if we can get them back on board to help supporting us.
My last understanding was that they were going to dissolve that foundation,
That-
transfer the money over.
That was my understanding too, several months ago, and
This is the first I heard that it wasn't done. So
yeah, we've been trying to touch base with them for months and trying to get them to commit, and they haven't done so.
I can help on that if necessary, because I can contact them fairly easily.
I think we would appreciate any help we can get. It just seems to be.
Are you aware that they didn't do
difficult.
that? I mean,
They came in and they were the ones who brought it up.
yeah, I thought it was a done deal, so.
Right. That's why I wanted to bring this up, because this would really assist in defraying
And
this
the,
portion.
the proceeds from the race on the base that get transferred over to the pool, where do those go? Are those not for capital things?
Right now, all of that goes into the general fund for our department to help offset the costs for everything else. So right now, all the race on the base goes into the race on base line item in the general fund.
So do you recall what the Aquatic Foundation, the magnitude of the money they had? I don't remember the amount.
So the last bank statement that I looked at is around $52,000.
Thank you.
But we do have some general funds that are.
Correct.
being-
We have about
Budget.
41,000, I believe, somewhere around that from the pool CIP. So their 52,000 combined with our 40 would suffice for the project that we need to do at this point.
One more question regarding the race on the base and those funds. My recollection again is in the past, the Parks and Recreation Commission has been asked, and that money has gone over to the pool, which is part of the pool being tied into it and so on. That policy or procedure no longer exists. It just, when was that changed?
When the pool fund was dissolved and moved into the general fund, then the money was no longer pulled aside and put towards the pools into a separate pool fund. So since then, it just went into the general fund in the general fund special events line item.
But we are taking general fund money this year. This year, we do have general funds
Well, this is
earmarked for the pool.
This
So-
is kind of the same thing, I think, that Richard has been watching and looking at, and there's a lot of commingling stuff that wasn't originally happening and is now starting to happen again, so. I just think, we need to revisit it. If there was a policy set by a prior council to do that, then that's fine. If there wasn't a policy set, then I think we need to look at it and make a determination. Because the last couple of races have generated nets close to $100,000. And I appreciate it's a good portion is due to the work that Parks and Recreation does, but if that's how we're going to balance Parks and Recreation, then I think that should be clear that that's what we're doing.
We will research that and respond back to City Council.
Josh, before you go on, so can you just go back one page? Because I think.
It's not close.
So this is the part we're talking, the bottom part is the pool repair, right? There was the two.
There's two sets of
Right.
bullet.
So one that's budgeted, one that we have to find the funds, and
Yeah.
the aquatic foundation may be a potential source.
Correct.
So I just wanted to kind of summarize that. And then for Councilmember Edgar and Mayor Pro Tem Graham Hugh, who just got here, the next page, we didn't really get into any type of discussion. Next page, please.
Oh,
On the revitalization. So I know it had been proposed, but what's the purpose of the spending of this? I think Troy's going to be interested in this one.
Well, I'll explain that. At the last year's budget, we talked about, we had the $200,000 in reserves, and we put it out for year 13, 14, and 14, 15, and didn't have it for last year's. The project's been on hold. It was in the 7-year CI plan and stayed there, so I kept it in those years to find out from the council, do you want us to move forward on this project, or is it still on hold? So I didn't change the dates that we had last year approved, and so that just automatically came up to this year. If you recall, last time we stopped the project at getting a public outreach firm on board to go out and talk to the citizens. We did some conceptual design. We did a traffic study on the project, and we were ready to hit the streets and go out and get the public outreach going, and then with that, bring it back to the council. So we've been really doing nothing for, I think, the last 2 years on the project. So it's there for discussion purposes to see if the council's interested in us to go forward with it, as it was on the schedule for last year, or to move it further out, or not at all.
So if I understand, so I know we had a budget, I know it had been in the plan, but right now there is no project ongoing right now for this.
Absolutely not.
Okay. So I think it comes back to us, and I'm glad Troy and Jerry are both here. They can weigh in on this one.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So a little bit of history. There's no project, as you had stated, Dave, is because we basically got to a snag about 2 years ago on being able to move the project forward. This project ended with a traffic study dealing with what I thought was probably more of a political issue than a policy issue, which was concerning the community for constraining, LaSalle Boulevard, and specifically constraining the ability for people to get to the high school in the morning. What I felt that was unveiled in that study was actual data that, provided support that there was a good project there. The other thing about this 200,000, 100,000 that we're seeing here, but if you actually look in the CIP over the 7-year period, there's 200,000 this year and the next. There's also 1 or 2 other projects, because this downtown revitalization really consisted of probably 6 or 7 different projects. We had a reconfiguration out here on Catella and left onto LaSalle Boulevard, that reconfiguration of the turn pocket. You had the realignment of the intersections at Cerritos and LaSalle Boulevard that had to be taken into account. And forget even for a moment, but it's in here, the bridge over Catella, which was a great story. But there's a lot of different pieces still in the CIP that, we could talk about. But where we left off is really, I think we kind of lost, we were focused on a lot of different things, and I think at that point we just didn't have the support of the council. I will just put it out there that I respectfully request the council keeps it under consideration. This is something I'm very interested in, as much as I was 2 years ago, and I feel that with the hospital going forward, the psychological effect of seeing the construction and seeing the face of our city moving forward, I think it's very important to pick up on the revitalization. The second thing is, that piece of property that was adjacent to the building where Green Street Interiors is over there off of Sausalito has fell through again, is now available, and is now back in play. I've also had discussions with Mr. Afshanti, who has the building where Shoe City and all of that location is. You know, within the context of he's interested in doing something with this center if the city was actually serious. But those discussions have went down vacating streets and doing all sorts of different stuff that I clearly can't do as one council member, but, you know, trying to get support on the council to have further discussions. Again, I would just respectfully request, the theme is I want to move forward with something to help the city, but I'll say what I said 2.5 years ago. I'm not stuck on it has to be on Los Al Boulevard. You know, so with that, I'll just leave it out there. And again, I would hope that we would leave it in. Honestly, we probably won't do anything in the short term. Even if we decided today to do a major reconstruction, we wouldn't be able to start it this year. So if a fallback position, if I have to have one, would be move the money out 1 year, or move the phase, the 200,000 out another year out, and because we're not going to spend it this next year because we can't get a project done that fast anyway. Well, and with that, I'll wait and listen to see where everybody else is at. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Richard, anything?
Yeah, actually, with the falling through of the piece down on Serpentine, I thought that this is something we should revisit. Maybe not maybe more of a piecemeal approach. I think the number one vote getter for the citizens' input was trees. And the only part of the main part of the city that doesn't have the planters in the middle is right up north of Catella. And that seems like that would be an easily agreed upon from all aspects of the city, that we should be able to do that and maybe clean up some of the traffic problems that go on, people crossing in many various spots up there. So I would like to see it left in, and if it has to be done next year, that's understandable, but I can't believe that we're in June and our fiscal year runs till next June. We should be able to at least consider it.
I've got a little bit of Coyote Creek on me still. That one for a while.
I just say I'm supportive of continuing to look at it, so I realize it's a long-term deal, but
I have brought this up every year because it's just sitting here not being used. And not that I don't support doing something with Los Al Boulevard. I think it's very bland looking, very old looking. I would be supportive of the 200,000 potentially maybe being used for a median. I know that there are a lot of people. I work over on that street and at a salon. And I know that the people over there would love to see a median. And when that came forward in the Compass Blueprint, they were very supportive of that. There was some concern about the congestion because of the school, and I would have to say I agree that's going to happen if we were to narrow the street. But this, in essence, isn't. It's just filling in the middle section. If we are not going to do that in this year, I have some other ideas where this money might be able to go out this year, and then it could come back in next year to replenish it. But there are some things that I think that we need to address in a timely manner. And if we aren't going to use this today or this year, maybe we could do some other stuff with like 100,000 of it and then replenish it the following year if we're not going to move forward with the CIP project.
Okay, and just to add some comments, so I think I'll sort of have a reaction to Richard, what you said about piecemeal. I don't think we want to do piecemeal. I'm all for let's see what we can do in terms of sensible planning, and I think that's maybe in conjunction with the general plan update, right? That whole
In steps may have been a better way to
yeah,
put it.
right. I know you didn't mean piecemeal, but I just yeah, what we can do, I think, smartly, and let's have that vision out there and see where we're end up going. So with that, I kind of am going to resonate with what Councilmember Edgar said about. Perhaps not in this next budget that we'll be able to really get anything going, but push it out maybe one more year. But I'm not in favor of allocating it somewhere else at this time, but I'll wait to see what Mayor Pro Tem Graham Mejia might have in way of ideas and needs. So, but that's, I think, where I'm at.
Mayor, may I, since we've already addressed, Troy and I, we were here late, there's another item on here that,
You want to go back?
yeah, if we could.
Oh, pass it down. Okay.
I'm sorry, page 3. and it was under the pool repairs and such. And what I would like to say is, in my tenure, this has gone from the the pool designations in the budget have, in my tenure, instead of being spread out where they were easier to define, have been kind of lumped into this one sum. And I think that's what you were saying, Dean, it makes it harder to track.
Not sure that's what I was.
What were you saying? If you will, just refresh for me.
No, the part I was talking about was the funds that are generated out of the race on the base. In the past, that decision had gone to Parks and Recreation Commission, and all the time that I can recall was designated to the pool as part of the upkeep of the Olympic pool.
Right.
Apparently, somewhere in the process, that money is no longer designated, and I don't know if it was a policy by the council, but it now goes directly into the general fund under Parks and Recreation and is used for their programs. So
Isn't it used for the pool? That was my understanding. Because I was on the council at that time, and my recollection of it is, and Troy's nodding his head, so, is that the money would go directly and just to make it a cleaner process. So,
maybe, Corey, you could readdress what you told us
Right.
earlier.
My recollection is very similar, that it had been a policy. That was when the pool fund was a separate fund. And after that, since then, the pool fund got dissolved and moved into the general fund. So the money from the race, there wasn't anywhere for it to go as far as a separate fund designated anywhere else. So they had just wrapped it into the general fund as another line item. So unless we're able to move it into the capital improvement fund for the pool, which we designate separately, right now it just goes into the general fund.
But we are designating 40,000 from that into the pool repairs.
If I can just add a little bit of a history behind that, is that what was going on is that we absolutely changed the policy when we dissolved the pool fund, but that was to try and streamline our special funds because we weren't having, it was hard to track the flow in and out, just as if in tonight I'll show two others that I think we ought to be looking at. All that being said, though, and I think this is what happens because we've had some turnover in finance, is that the policy that, and as Jerry was saying, we were trying to institute was that we want our Parks and Recreation programs to be self-funding and really cost neutral. So directly, for the number and the amount of revenue generated, net revenue positive, by direction was supposed to be going towards Parks and Recreation. Quite honestly, I was dealing with Angie, not yourself at that time, or the city manager, and so that might have been lost in the translation. So if we can firm that up, but it was supposed to be 100% dedicated, and we've always had a challenge. We have an aquatics fund of $50,000 that's out there, controlled by a nonprofit that, we've been waiting for that money to come in to help with the pool deck issue. But I think really the intention was to try to maintain a revenue stream for that pool so it could sustain itself. It was 68% self-sustained, got moved up to like 75, 76 when we did the policy change. And I'm hoping that we haven't gotten away from that. So I'm hoping the money doesn't go directly into the general fund, as Councilmember Gross was saying. And I think it's a fair question, and it's one that we just need to tighten up if it is. Thank you.
Finally, this slide illustrates the discussions we've had over the community give back program. Last meeting, well, first of all, council gave direction to discuss this during the budget process, so I'm bringing the slide up now. And we had discussions on the park program at the last meeting, and then we also have the 3 additional items that were from the March 18th report. So I wanted to bring that up for your discussion.
This is what I was talking about earlier. If we are looking at doing a median, let's say, on La Salle Boulevard, we've got 200,000 set aside, plus we've got 76 that obviously was going to be spread out through the community, but some of that can be used in those medians. It wasn't necessarily designated for residents. It was throughout the community. So we have a good chunk. Is Tony down there? Tony, what roughly, just could you give us beginning, like low level, median, and then a high end, and what the cost might be? Just a range, if you would.
Well, the Chestnut meeting we just put in was like $50,000 for that short reach, you know. and-
Right.
But that wasn't any landscaping, that was putting in pavers in there.
Right.
That, you know, so you can extrapolate that out. I mean, you're talking probably close to $400,000
Okay.
if you want to do the whole thing in that neighborhood.
Good.
Right.
That's kind of the information I was looking for. So anyways, that was just food for thought, that we've already said we've set this aside now because of situations that have arisen regarding neighboring communities. We may not want to use this money, and I'm fine with that. I appreciate the council supporting the kids with the other 42 for the parks programs. I think it's a great investment in our youth, and that's really all I wanted to add with regards to this, this community give back.
Just a matter of bookkeeping, before we start keeping it isolated as calling the community give back, and it doesn't say it on the chart, but what's the total amount that's allocated for that? It's like 356. You know, at the end of last year, we started getting a little loose on what we were kind of looking at as far as what our expenditures and whether we had funding for it. So right before Christmas, we added the Christmas decorations, and you know, and we said, hey, you know, this is something we need to do, unfunded, and it was like, how much, 30,000. Then, you know, we got ready to settle some of the labor issues as we were putting together our employee contracts, and I'm just kind of curious, you know, we haven't seen the total net of how much of last year's reserve did we spend and did we pull down. You know, a lot of people are going to look at the amount that we had for the general plan, that was 125,000. Some of these other things that we were consciously pulling down out of the reserve. Also, we're looking at a new reserve policy to have a designated and restricted fund. And now we're talking about this. And I just want to make sure that we're all looking at netting off everything against where it should be. Because like the Christmas things, I almost look at as something that would have went towards something like this. And I would have thought this would have been at least 30,000 of the 358. But again, I'm trying to remember, how did we pay for that activity at the end of the year? Is there any other polls on really unplanned polls on reserves that we've done already where we've already started spending?
Are we talking about
I'm talking about this fiscal year.
fiscal year that we're in
Yeah,
right now?
right now.
I know you don't have it in front of me or in front of you, but we have the general plan pulling it down by 165,000, and the business and residential improvement program 162, but we're still waiting to see how much of that actually comes in. And then there was a small amount of 10,000 we spent for the pool. And then the big item, of course, was the 300,000 donation for the gym renovations. Yeah.
So that's 637,000 unfunded reserves that we've spent. And I would subscribe that the general plan was known all along.
Right.
The pool was kind of a reaction to an opportunity, or not the pool, Oak was a reaction to an opportunity brought to us through the working group. You know, the residential program, the business improvement and residential was something thought through. But I mean, so we're looking at 637,000 of reserve coming down over the last year, because it's, you know, we're feeling good and we feel we have a healthy reserve. Now we're looking at 358, so it's up to $1 million of the total reserve. And again, I'm just wanting to make sure that we're consciously making these decisions in the big picture. We just had a spending point, and now we're going to do it and continue it. On top of what Jerry said with the issue going on with our neighbors, I just want to make sure that we're thinking through this.
And 100,000 for the SRO also.
Oh, yeah, and the
which was
90,000,
supposed
yeah.
to be half and half the police department budget, but didn't end up that way.
Right.
Well, in all fairness, this total is not $356,000, it's
Right.
$141,000. So,
No, you're right.
you know, just so we have real numbers, and if you want to talk about the fact that with the stimulus for the community shopping within town, we still don't know how many people are going to collect on that. So just know that that's not a hard number.
And then I can add on the holiday lights at the end of last year, Troy, because I hope you know I didn't support them, but on that one I did, because I wanted to see how it was going to go. And if I recall, I'm looking at Corey, there was some underrun somewhere that was going to be used for that, so it wasn't really coming out of reserves. I think city manager Avery had some, you know, she didn't have so hired assistant to the city manager, and so I think there was some underrun that she was able to utilize for that purpose, so that's where that came from.
However, that's where it did come from, but it was also widely thought that Christmas lights would easily make it.
Oh, I thought it would make
onto
it,
the-
yeah.
Into the give back, and then it got no votes, virtually no votes at
Right.
all.
Well, after their experience, in all fairness, they were poorly done. They weren't lit. One was lit and 20 weren't. So I don't think that's really a fair depiction of people's, you know, view on what they would have liked. If you look at that example, sure, I wouldn't spend $90,000 either. I mean, but I do think the survey tells you that the community wants, you know, different things than what we're offering now that are not generally provided for by the city. And that's why when we talked initially about giving the 1% back, you were not on the council at the time. And we said, let's just give that money back to them to show a good faith effort, because it initially was at 3%. Some years ago, it was bumped up to 6%. There was supposed to be a sunset on that, and it never happened. So when we started to see the reserve growing, we said, maybe we should give 1% back, see what kind of effect it has across the board, and if it's not substantial, maybe we just reduce it to 5 and keep it there. But then you and a couple of other people came forward and said, well, this is not a good idea, it's a minimal amount, which, by the way, we didn't get those numbers until we sat down at the dais, so we couldn't make a real well-judged decision on that. So we decided to put it into this fund to give back to the community, because it's not, the intent was never to build a median. That was not the intent. The intent was to give the money back, and if not, we could let these people decide what they wanted.
Okay.
But the Christmas tree decoration, the Christmas decorations were a nightmare, so, no, you're right on that.
Okay.
That was the end
Okay,
of this.
can I ask, where did we end up on that then? That was an interesting discussion, so I'm still unclear where we're at. I mean, you know,
Well, we would draw the outside of the reserves we have set up. We're recommending we draw down 100,000 for the emergency generator and 40,000 for the pool repairs. The Los Alamitos Boulevard revitalization has money set aside for it, and then the other 40,000 of pool repairs does have money set aside for it.
okay.
On the pool repairs, we talked before you came here about trying to contact that committee.
Foundation.
Yeah.
The foundation to assist.
You missed that discussion.
Yeah, I don't
So,
know.
so Corey has homework to do, and Dean's going to help him.
And the $100,000 for the median thing, you know, my joking lack of confidence whether we can execute that in a year is not a statement of fact.
Yeah.
I don't know what's possible over the year, and, you know, my hope is it would stay in and, you know, empower us, because it would probably take an engineering study that would cost a portion of that 100,000 to get that done to start with, and it'd be good to get that in motion if the rest of the council supports that.
Yeah, it was more just if we designated for that, I would be supportive of that.
And we would plan on keeping it in, and this comes before you for a final vote next month, so at this point in time, that's what is happening with this discussion, presentation.
You know, one thing that concerns me, and I'm gonna lay it on Richard from the standpoint of bringing this up. We've talked that there's $200,000 earmarked within the reserves for downtown redevelopment. And now I'm hearing Jerry say, well, if we're not gonna spend it, we can use it for other things, and I've got other projects. And that's like saying, I still got checks, and there's money in the bank, so
Well.
what concerns me with the reserves that we have is that there's ideas about how to utilize it, and if those get traction in the process, we're gonna be in the same boat we've been in years past. We don't have reserves. We did set aside $2.5 million, I believe, which was 25% for emergency purposes. You and I have talked that may
Is that the
may
Elizabeth
not be
chair?
enough as it is to really get us much more than a couple of weeks or whatever, if there was a funding issue that came down. We need to get a better handle on exactly what the reserves really are and what money is available, because we're self-insured, I believe, and you can help on that, Mayor. We're self-insured on part of the claims that might occur against the city. And we're using CJDA, I think, more as the catastrophic loss. I'm not positive that's true, but a certain amount of that, the park indebtedness that we've got, the Moral Park, the retirement. So I mean, just because it's there doesn't mean that it needs to be allocated or spent. And I think we're still being frugal, good stewards from the standpoint of money in terms of identifying it. And I'm not sure how much of it is a slush fund that we can go about doing it. Business and residential get back thing was really the stimulant. People doing things and improving and making the community better. And we won't know until once we get past June, and then probably not until the end of the year, how much of that really did work and did go back to the people. But I mean, that's definitely one of the things that I think we need some clarity on as far as the reserves are concerned.
Very precious dollars. Mayor and City Council, we can give you a detailed accounting with the final adoption of the budget. I think that's what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Well, Dean, I don't know if your assumptions are, because I'm a woman, I like to spend, but that's not the case. Really, what my idea was there are some things in town that need to be addressed now, and there is money set aside in the next years where if we could use the money now to address those things because it's just sitting dormant in the reserve, we could get those CIP projects done now. The money that's funded for the projects in the following year could go back into the $200,000 for the revitalization. And what I'm talking about is we have some real problems with sidewalks. They're trip hazards. They're safety issues for our community. And if there's money that we could take to put to address those now, to bring them into compliance so our people are not at risk, not only do we protect our residents, but we protect the city from any litigation that might arise from those. In addition to that, we have street signs. Not a safety issue, but as you're driving down Farquhar, there are some street signs you can't even read that go into neighborhoods. I know that Tony and I had talked about the CIP for that. If there's money now that we can use that's not going to be used this next year, then why not use it for those projects and then take the money that's allotted for those projects to put back in? Yeah, but there's a lot to do, and Tony was telling me that now there's a new compliance that we have to meet with, that the letters have to be 3 inches big and illuminated. So you have to do a whole neighborhood, I believe, if I understood correctly, in order. You can't just do one. You can't just repair one. So it's just food for thought. I'm not dictating to you by any means. I'm just saying that was my thought process. If the monies can be used for those things and it's appropriate, great. If it can't, well, you know, I know there are different funds for different uses. It's not to draw down the money from the revitalization. I would love to see that look more beautiful up there. I just think that if it's just sitting there, we might as well use it until the money's there for the next year.
I've seen those signs. I mean,
If you look at suburbia, you can't read the signs at all. Facing, you know, east-west where the sun comes up and goes down, they're practically white.
That's what I ride my bike.
Yeah, exactly. And the sidewalks are, you know, questionable.
The street signs are already represented in the budget. There's 20,000 this current year, 20,000 next year, 20,000 next year to meet the legal compliance of turning up the reflectability a bit.
Yes, but that doesn't mean we couldn't use the money from the reserve to do more this year and take the money that's set aside for next year and put it back into the reserve. Is all I was saying, get more done in 1 year as opposed to delaying it for the second year. Is that-
We're not delaying it. We're going to we'll meet the objective over the 3 years.
But it can be done quicker is my point.
Maybe we could give you a report. on
Sure,
when
that'd be
it's going
great.
to be done
Sure,
to the city council.
thank you.
Councilmember Barrett got a few more questions. It was just a packet,
Yeah.
so.
So just a couple, no, I'm not going to go backwards. I'm always looking forward. Really quickly, if you go to page 2 of the staff report on the AQMD Fund 23, if you look in there, it looks like there's a revenue of 14,000, a use of money of 100. The thing that I can't tell on this new format is what the total balance currently is. So approximately how much is in the AQMD fund? I know it's in here in another schedule, I think.
Yeah, the very last page has the projection for the ND fund balance for all funds. It's attachment 10.
Okay. So what is the, just for the public's knowledge, the,
AQMD, I'm sorry, what's that?
the AQMD, the approximate,
AQMD looks like it will be ending with 23,626.
okay.
And my understanding is typically we let the fund balance grow in there, and then we purchase, sometimes we purchase vehicles or hybrid type vehicles that qualify.
Okay. Let's see. I thought of an interesting observation, Measure M, Fund 26 on page 2. The turnback funds, 132, 144, 170, 184. Does everybody see that? It's the revenue we get. And just a clarification, so that's the half-cent sales tax across Orange County, and this is our portion that comes back to LoSal, correct? So, for example, to just give you, kind of a reaction. So just this last couple of weeks, OCTA passed and reopened the 405 study for toll lanes, but they agreed to do it and funded it for $140,000 for another study to get done between now and June. So they allocated the same amount that we actually get a year. And so my question is there any further ability legislatively to lobby for a bigger amount of money than, I mean, it looks like every year we're getting a little bit of an increase, but when you talk to Gary Miller in Seal Beach, Matt Harper, Huntington Beach, John Morlock, those are our 3 reps that are on OCTA board. This is the amount of money we get. And if you look over here, the signal improvement grants, we haven't gotten real extra money since 2009-10. So the question to staff is there opportunities and we're just not applying, or is it this dire? Because even though the economy turned down, the OCTA turnback money stayed fairly consistent. So I'm just curious if since 2009-10, why are we just not able to get more money for our streets?
There is some special grants that you can chase that out in there. And actually, we had some on the Los Alamitos Boulevard from Cotello to Cerritos at one point to put meeting islands in there and stripe it to 3 lanes on both sides. It was about $500,000. We gave that money back in that time frame. We did go out and get special money to do our synchronization of Cotello Avenue all the way across. I mean, that was part of the whole county Measure M funds, but it was in there. There are some programs out there, and some of them we just didn't qualify for, some we are. We're getting approximately $75,000 we're applying for this year for our environmental M2 money to do the catch basin inserts that's out there. That application, did that go in?
That went in.
Went in. And so we're going after some of that money. I have our traffic engineers looking at other signals that we have and do. And guys, gotta remember, Cotello's our main street, and those are kind of all up to snuff right now with our Smart Street project we did, the synchronization that we have. It had also back when we did the Smart Street was, synchronized so the ambulance is going back and forth and all that. So that street's pretty much taken care of. The south part of Los Alamitos Boulevard is synchronized with Seal Beach. It really kind of left the north part, which is the downtown project, went into a state of, not knowing what we're going forward with. It was difficult to apply for funds in there, not knowing where we are going to go with that project. So we really kind of put that off on hold. Like I say, we got money at one time to do the median islands and other stuff in there, but,
So let me just get to my point then. If theoretically, and I know it's not starting the downtown revitalization project, but let's just say the mediums are kind of in scope, is there an ability to lobby? I do remember the money we had, and it was a shame to have to give that back. And, OCTA for the public's use is, it's main arterials only. So, King Street or, any small streets aren't going to get the money. It's Cotello, LoSal, et cetera. And I'm just wondering if this is an opportunity. The data's here. This is what I keep track of when I think of OCTA. What are they doing for us lately? I'm looking here. So
they would love to give us money on that to improve the traffic flow through the city. That's their main goal.
okay.
Not to slow it down, not to, so they're, tied with that money was making it 3 lanes in each direction too, which caused conflict. So there's some issues in there, but they would like to give us money to help move traffic along, and Meeting Islands help move traffic along.
Okay. Well, we have a traffic study we paid money for that we
Right.
looked at. Even Rich said we may have to clean up some things there. Just because we're running short on time, the Asset Seizure Fund 27 doesn't look like we've got a lot of revenue. I know that that's really, remember the windfall we had 2009-10? So those don't come around every day. For the public's use, when we participate in a federal or a county raid and there's drugs, money, whatever, we get a portion of the monetary assets. Is this something, I guess we have to leave it open if for 4 years we're not really seeing anything there? Do we legally leave these types of funds or accounts open? This is under the perspective of cleaning up and keeping our financials lean, because that history that, falls off after the council members. In 5 years, somebody will be asking, why is it on here?
I can answer that for you, council member. This is a restricted fund, so even after 4 years, we wouldn't be able to touch it. It has to be used for law enforcement purposes, frontline, and it's supposed to be used for some type of drug enforcement activity. The council has allowed us to use it to buy equipment for the vehicles, which are used in frontline enforcement, such as replacing our computers in the cars, video cameras in the cars, things like that. So anytime we're buying some equipment for the police department that's going to be frontline use, that becomes the fund we use it for, even if it's a technology, or particularly if it's a technology project for the PD.
Okay, so restricted fund stays, got it. Mayor, I'm going to stop there, just in being sensitive to time. I can take my other questions off with staff.
Thank you. With that, I think we'll wrap up.
I'd just like to say that, just a reminder on the calendar, that we have a June 3rd meeting at 6 p.m. for follow-up items, and then June 17th for the regular meeting, public hearing, and budget adoption.
Okay, so, and before we adjourn, the next item on the special orders for today is item 3B, which is the introduction of Sunbirth Youth Academy Student Council. And I want to defer this over to Councilmember Gross. This is his vision. I want to make sure that he participates in this, if you wouldn't mind.
Not a problem. The Sunburst Youth Academy at the Joint Forces Training Base is going to be graduating class number 11, I believe it's on the 6th or 7th of June at Cottonwood Church. And their student council had approached me regarding coming in and observing and participating in a council meeting. So our plan at this particular point is to have them come on in. They're here. Have them come on in and have them on the dais when we open up the actual part of the council meeting. And then we'll excuse them to go back out and sit in the audience, and that way they can leave whenever they feel like it from the standpoint. But we'll actually introduce them when they get up on the dais prior to the start of the next meeting, if that's agreeable, Mayor.
So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn until our regular meeting at 6 o'clock, and that'll give us a few moments to reconfigure and get some refreshments. So, thank you.